Day and welcome. We're talking ice cream trucks today. No, we're really not talking ice cream trucks today. We're talking about graphing today, okay? Specifically, graphing a set of data, being able to use a scatter plot, trying to get a best fit line, a trend line, and then using that equation from that trend line to be able to figure out other data. So maybe extrapolating data or maybe just using some of the numbers. So what we've got here is I've got some sample data. So I've got some ice cream sales and depending on what the temperature was. So how does temperature affect ice cream sales is kind of what I want to know, okay? And what I specifically want for my graph is I want ice cream sales versus temperature. This is really important, okay? So if I look at how this is written here, it's always going to be written as y-axis versus your x-axis. So that's always the way that that your graph, the way that it's titled. So I want ice cream sales on y and temperature on x. Now typically what happens when you are on sheets is the first column is your x-axis and the second column is your y-axis, okay? So what I want to do is I want to switch these because as I saw here, I actually want temperature on my x-axis, okay? So what I'm going to do is first, I am going to kind of grab this little double arrow here, double click on it so it enlarges. That way I can just see what this is reading, make sure that it reads correctly. Now what I want to do is I want to switch this over. I'm going to just click on this data here and I want to switch this so that now temperature is on my x-axis and ice cream sales are on my y-axis. Now, there's going to be an issue here because it does read dollar signs fine, but as far as temperature is concerned, these little degree symbols, you don't want any words or any symbols, okay? And so what it's going to do is it's going to almost read it as if it were just a label, that each one was its own label. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So if I go to highlight this and I click here to insert chart, then you can see that it's not actually putting the numbers in order. It's doing these as every single one is its own entity, okay? And so I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I am going to highlight this area right here. I'm going to actually, let me just first highlight one of these little degree symbols. I'm going to copy it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this. So just a couple of shortcuts here. I'm going to Control F, which finds something, and I'm going to paste to find that degree symbol. And I am going to replace it with nothing. So I'm just going to hit my space bar once and I'm going to say replace all and it just replaced them. Then I don't have to go in and just click delete on every single one, especially if you have like 100 pieces of data in there and you had to delete all of those, okay? And so now what it does is if I went to graph this, then I could simply just highlight this area, this region right here, and then I'm going to click on insert chart, or you could click insert and then you could click chart down here, but I always like using the icon. So I'm going to insert my chart right here. Okay. So as you notice here, so I do have my ice cream sales, my dollar signs on my y-axis, which is what I wanted, and I have my temperature on my x-axis, and you can see that it spaced them out, and it did it according to temperature and increasing temperature, because the temperature was different on those different days. And so really what I'm trying to figure out is at what temperature is kind of like maximal for, or is there a trend even between like, is when the temperature is higher, are the ice cream sales better? So what we can see here are a few different things that I kind of want you to notice here. Okay, so one of the things is whatever I had up here as my heading is my axis label. Okay, so notice that since I had temperature, let's see if I can just move this over a little bit. I had temperature in degrees Celsius here, and that's what it put as my x. I didn't even have to fill it in. Same thing with my y-axis. So that's important, is what did you fill in to this first line here, okay, as your heading. And notice also, it labeled my graph correctly. This is my y-axis versus my x-axis, so it's done correctly. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my chart editor because I want a line. Okay, now normally what ends up happening is they give you maybe a line chart, maybe sometimes they give you a bar graph. So this is a histogram. So they give you some type of like line, and that's not what I wanted. Okay, and so what I wanted was I wanted a scatter plot, and so I'm going to come back here, and that happened to be the one that was suggested, but that's how you change that. That's how you can customize that. Okay. And so you can switch things up down here. Let's go to customize, because what I want to do now is I want to add a line. And so to do that, I'm going to click on series. And by the way, you can click on chart and axis title. So if there's anything that I want to switch, I can switch my title text. I can change the fonts on it and things like that. So now on series, I do want to scroll down here. And this is where, I could change the color. So maybe I want this to be, I don't know, kind of like an aqua color. I wanted to change my points. Maybe instead of circles, I wanted triangles or something like that. So depending on what you wanted there, or stars or pentagons or whatever it is that you wanted, okay? And so, and again, you can change your point size, so I can make it 14 point if I wanted to. And then this is like setting up your axes. So what I want here is I actually want a trend line, okay? And so watch what happens. I'm going to throw in a trend line, and what it's doing is it's creating my line of best fit right here, okay? And so I do want to make sure that I have that added in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to label. And this is something that's going to be important here. Now what R squared is going to do is it's going to tell you how far away your different values are from your actual line. Okay, how close are you to the line? Because sometimes your numbers are so far away, and so that's what R squared does. We don't need R squared at this point, okay? So what I want is I want to show, and this is, just custom, but I actually want an equation. And so here's my equation right here. And this is the equation that I would use if I wanted to find a different value. Okay, what do I mean by that? So let's say that I wanted to figure out, instead of being 20 Celsius, what is it at 21 Celsius? Because I didn't happen to have 21 Celsius. Okay, and by the way, you can very easily switch to Fahrenheit. So we're used to temperatures in Fahrenheit. All I would have to do here, just to show you this, is I can click equals, and then I can take this value, and I know that if I look up the equation for changing Celsius to Fahrenheit, I can multiply my Celsius by 1.8, and I can add 32. So it's 9/5 plus 32. It's your Celsius times 9/5 plus 32. And I hit equals, and it will give me, okay, let's see here. Oh, I need to switch this so that it's a multiplication sign written that way. And now I hit equals, and it tells me that 14.2 Celsius is 57.56. And then what I do is, if I just drag this down with my crosshair, it actually gives me all the temperatures, all of these temperatures. It turns this, everything here is an equation now. And so it basically just switched all of these into Fahrenheit. So I could very easily just take all of these values instead, Control X, and I'm just going to paste them in here. So Control V to paste those right in there. And now I've got degrees Fahrenheit instead. Now it dragged my my equation. So what I would want to do is I'd want to change it so that it's not an equation and it's just the numbers, and you can pretty easily do that too, okay? So just to kind of give you an idea of how to switch those around, okay? All right, so let's go back to how it was. So again, let's just say that I wanted it for 21 degrees, which is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, by the way, okay? And so I want to know what this value is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this equation and let's just move it right over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my new x-axis data. Okay, so I'm trying to find y. Y is my money, and I'm going to plug in my x. Okay, and so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say that it's 30.1 times x, which I'm going to say is 21 degrees Celsius. So I want to see how much money it would be. So this at y-axis is going to give me my money. Okay, and then plus negative 159, which is the same thing as minus 159. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter that into my calculator. So I've got 30.1 times 21, and then I'm going to subtract the 159 or add negative 159. And what I get is I get 473. Okay, so this would be equal to, so this is what my y is equal to $453. And so what I could do is I could basically use this graph here to figure out a higher temperature. So let's say I don't have 80 degrees. What is it if it's 80 degrees, right? And so I could figure that out as well. And last thing here is now I'm all set. So let's say I'm happy with my graph. I'm going to copy my chart, and I'm going to come to my document. And so if it says enter graph below, I'm going to Control V, and now you can either link it to your spreadsheet or you can paste it unlinked. So I can link it, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to click paste on here. Now the other thing that I want to make sure that you end up doing is that you want to ensure that you click on your share button up here, okay? And so I can name it, so let's just skip this for now. But I want to click change link to shared email system. And so that way, if your teacher needs to view your graph, then that makes it easy. And so then you can either make them viewer or editor, whatever it is that you want. So if you want to click it and change them to editor, you can do that too. And so then you just click done, and now we are all set. It's in my doc, and I've got a label down here also for my figure. So this should actually say figure 1 down here too, and it's a label, and it's usually on the bottom. And I hope that helped you. Happy day, everybody.